Have you ever reached a point in your life where you suddenly realized you've wasted years chasing things that didn't even matter? That gut-wrenching moment when you look around and wonder, what have I even done with my life? That's exactly where I was not too long ago. I thought I was living a meaningful life, chasing dreams, working hard, doing everything that looked good on paper. But the truth was, I was lost, empty, pretending that I was fine when deep down I was slowly drowning. This story is about how I lost everything chasing illusions and how, in that loss, I found what truly matters. But before you judge me or think I'm exaggerating, I want you to hear everything I went through and then tell me, was I wrong for walking away from everything I built just to start over? It all started 5 years ago, when I was in my late 20s, hungry for success, recognition, and validation. I was working as a corporate project manager in a big tech company, the kind of job people dream of. A nice office, good salary, business trips, a team under me, all sounded impressive, and I convinced myself that this was happiness. Every morning I'd wear my crisp white shirt, knot my tie perfectly, grab a coffee and tell myself, you're doing great, you're moving forward. But deep down, I was restless. I wasn't creating anything meaningful. I was just existing in someone else's system, pushing deadlines, attending pointless meetings, pretending to care about targets that didn't mean a thing to me. Then there was my circle, my friends, or should I say, the people I spent most of my weekends with. Everyone wanted to outshine each other: better cars, better watches, better vacations, better lives on social media. We would talk about success and freedom, but every one of us was trapped in the same invisible cage of comparison. I remember once at dinner, my best friend Rehan told me, "Bro, you gotta grind harder. Look at Imran, he's already bought his second apartment." And I laughed, pretending I agreed. But that night, I couldn't sleep. His words echoed in my head. Grind harder for what? To buy another apartment I didn't need? To impress people who didn't care? So, I started pushing myself even more. Late nights, early mornings, double shifts. My health declined. My mind turned foggy and my social life became a performance. Every photo I posted online was carefully edited to look like I was thriving. But in truth, I was exhausted. I had no real joy. I started waking up every morning with this heavy emptiness like a stone on my chest. I'd stare at the ceiling and think, is this it? Is this what life's supposed to be? One weekend, I visited my parents after months. My father, an old school teacher, looked at me and said, "Beta, you look tired. Are you okay?" I smiled and said, "Yeah, just work pressure." He nodded, but I saw the disappointment in his eyes. Not because I wasn't successful, but because he could see I wasn't happy. That night, my father told me a story, a simple story about time. He said, "When I was your age, I worked day and night to build a small house for your mother and you. I thought that was my purpose. But one evening, when your mother got sick and I had to stay by her side for weeks, I realized something important. All that time I spent chasing money could never buy me back those hours I could have spent with her. Time is the only thing you can't earn twice." I didn't think much of it that night, but those words stuck in my mind like a splinter. A few days later, something happened at work that cracked everything open. My boss, Mr. Daniels, called me into his office. "We've been impressed by your results, Zane," he said, "and we're considering you for the regional head position." My heart raced. That was the biggest promotion of my life. But then he added, "Of course it will mean relocating abroad for at least 3 years. We'll need your full commitment, longer hours, bigger responsibilities." I should have been thrilled, but instead, my stomach sank. I thought about my parents getting older, about my neglected passions, about how 3 more years would vanish just like the last 5. I forced a smile and said I'd think about it. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by expensive furniture and things I barely used. I looked around and realized that every single thing I owned was bought with my time, traded piece by piece for things that didn't matter. I opened my laptop and found an old folder named Dreams. Inside were drafts of stories I wrote when I was younger. Back then, I wanted to be a writer, to inspire people with words, to make them feel something real. But somewhere along the way, I buried that dream under bills, deadlines, and fear. Reading those old drafts made me cry. It felt like meeting an old version of myself, the one I'd abandoned. For days, I couldn't focus at work. My mind kept drifting back to that folder. Every meeting felt meaningless, every conversation forced. Finally, one night I made a decision that changed everything. I decided to quit. Not later, not after the promotion. Now, it wasn't easy. My colleagues thought I'd lost my mind. "You're throwing away your future," one of them said. "People would kill for your position." Maybe they were right, but what they didn't understand was I wasn't living. I was surviving. When I told my parents, my father just nodded. "So, you finally heard the echo," he said. I didn't understand what he meant at first, but I think he was talking about that inner voice that keeps whispering what's right when the world screams otherwise. I sold my apartment, gave away most of my stuff, and moved to a small town by the sea. It was quiet, peaceful, and for the first time in years, I could hear myself think. But life doesn't magically become perfect after one brave decision. I thought I'd feel free, but instead, I felt lost again, just in a different way. I had no routine, no plan, and no income. I started writing every day, but the words wouldn't come easily. I doubted myself constantly. What if I made a mistake? What if I end up broke? What if my stories never matter to anyone? Those thoughts haunted me every night. I started questioning my own worth. Society teaches you that your value is tied to your job title or income, and when you strip that away, you feel invisible. That's what I felt like, an invisible man chasing a foolish dream. Months passed, and my savings began to shrink. I started freelancing, writing articles and copy for small businesses, just to survive. It wasn't what I wanted, but it kept me going. Every day I'd walk along the beach after work, thinking about time, how we spend it, how we waste it, how we never get it back. There was an old fisherman named Kareem who used to sit near the pier. He'd always smile at me and say, "Son, don't measure your life by what you earn. Measure it by what you feel when the day ends." At first I brushed it off, but one evening I finally asked him, "What do you mean?" He chuckled and said, "Every day I go out to the sea. Some days I catch plenty, some days I catch nothing, but I always come home at sunset with peace in my heart. That's my success, because my time feels full." That line stayed with me like a truth I had forgotten. Then one morning, I got an email that changed everything again. A small motivational blog had accepted one of my stories, a story about time, loss, and purpose. They even paid me a modest amount, but it wasn't about the money. It was the validation that maybe, just maybe, my words could touch someone's heart. I remember standing on that beach that evening, watching the sun go down, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, meaning, but life wasn't done testing me. A few months later, my father's health began to deteriorate. I rushed back to the city to take care of him. Lying in that hospital bed, he smiled faintly and said, "You look lighter now, not tired anymore." I laughed and said, "Maybe I finally learned how to live." He nodded weakly and whispered, "Then promise me you won't forget this feeling." That night, sitting by his bedside, I realized something profound. Time isn't about how long you live, it's about how deeply you live. My father passed away 2 weeks later, but his last words became the compass that would guide me for the rest of my life. I know this story might sound like a cliche to some, another follow your dream speech, but it's not. It's about something much deeper. It's about reclaiming your time before it's too late. And trust me, you never realize how precious it is until someone you love runs out of it. So that's the situation I was in, standing at the crossroads between security and purpose, between fear and freedom. And before I tell you what happened next, how I rebuilt my life from nothing, how that single choice led to a journey that completely transformed me, I want you to pause for a second and tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have walked away from everything you built, risking it all just to chase meaning? Or would you have stayed in the comfort of certainty even if it slowly killed your soul? Because the choice I made after that moment changed my life forever. After my father's death, everything inside me shifted. Losing him made me see life through a completely different lens. The things that once felt important, money, position, status, suddenly looked meaningless. I had already quit my job, but now I felt an even deeper urge to live differently. Not just for myself, but to honor the wisdom he left behind. Still, I was scared. Grief is strange. It makes you see everything clearly, but it also drains your strength to act. I spent weeks in my childhood room surrounded by memories, wondering where to go from here. My savings were almost gone. My freelance work wasn't enough to sustain me long term. I kept hearing people whisper behind my back, "He quit his big job, and now look at him, jobless, broke, and lost." It hurt, but I didn't let it break me. My father's voice echoed in my mind, "Don't waste your time." So, I went back to the sea town, the same place where I had first started feeling alive again. I rented a small one-room apartment that smelled of salt and sun, and I decided to commit myself fully to writing. Not for money, not for validation, but to tell stories that mattered, to remind people that life isn't about racing against time, but about cherishing it. At first it was tough. I'd sit for hours staring at a blank screen. Doubt would creep in. You're not good enough. Nobody cares about your stories. But then I'd think about my father, about Kareem the fisherman, about the life I used to live that drained every ounce of my soul, and I'd push through. I started a small blog called The Wordy Journey. The name came from my belief that every word, every experience, every scar is part of the journey that makes us who we are. I didn't have an audience, just me, my thoughts, and a shaky Wi-Fi connection, but I poured my heart into it. Every post I wrote came straight from my soul, stories about time, pain, love, and growth. I shared my personal journey, my failures, my doubts, and slowly, something magical began to happen. People started reading, then they started writing back. At first, it was a few comments, people thanking me for putting into words what they couldn't express themselves. But then one morning I woke up to an email that made me cry. It was from a woman named Anne. She wrote, "Your story about losing your father made me call mine for the first time in years. Thank you for reminding me that time doesn't wait." I read that email over and over. For the first time in my life, I realized that my words had meaning, that my time was finally creating something real. The blog grew slowly, organically. Within a year, I had a loyal following, readers from all over the world who connected with my honesty. They called themselves travelers of the wordy journey, and that small online family gave me purpose. I wasn't earning much, but every day felt full. I'd wake up, make coffee, sit by the window overlooking the sea, and write for hours. My days weren't glamorous, but they were mine. Every second felt earned. But life, as always, has its tests. After about 18 months of this peaceful routine, I got an unexpected call from my old company. The HR manager said, "Zane, we've been following your journey online. It's inspiring. We'd like to offer you a consulting role. You can work remotely, good pay, flexible hours." For a moment, I froze. It was tempting, the money, the stability, the safety net I didn't have anymore. I told them I'd think about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Part of me missed the comfort of a stable paycheck, but another part, the stronger part, remembered the emptiness that came with it. So, I went for a walk by the beach, where Kareem was still fishing like always. I told him about the offer, expecting him to tell me to take it, but he smiled and said, "You already know the answer, son. The question isn't whether you can go back, it's whether you want to." I looked at him, realizing he was right. I didn't want to go back. I wanted to keep walking forward, even if the road was uncertain. I politely declined the offer the next day. That decision wasn't easy, but it was the moment I fully committed to my purpose. Over the next few years, the wordy journey turned into something much bigger than I had ever imagined. I started posting motivational videos, voiceovers of my stories, and before I knew it, people began sharing them everywhere. My content started reaching millions of viewers across YouTube, Instagram, and podcasts. I wasn't chasing fame, but somehow, it found me. And when it did, it didn't feel empty this time. It felt earned, honest, and fulfilling. I started receiving invitations to speak at schools and seminars. The first time I stood on stage in front of hundreds of students, I felt something indescribable. I shared my story about quitting my job, losing my father, and rediscovering meaning. When I finished, people stood up and clapped. A young student walked up to me later and said, "Sir, I was about to drop out of college because I felt lost, but your story made me want to keep going. Thank you." That moment hit me like a wave. That was the reward I had been searching for all along. Not money, not fame, impact. You see, I learned something powerful. Success isn't measured by how high you climb, but by how deeply you connect with yourself and with others. My journey taught me that time is the real currency of life. Every minute you spend doing something meaningless is a piece of your soul you'll never get back. And once it's gone forever. I started teaching this idea through my work. Don't waste your time living someone else's life. We live in a world that constantly tells us what success should look like. Bigger houses, faster cars, fancier titles, but none of that matters if your heart feels empty when you close your eyes at night. I used to measure my worth in salary digits. Now I measure it in smiles, letters, and stories shared by people who found hope through my words. But even with all this success, I won't pretend life became perfect. There are still days I feel lost, days when I question if I'm good enough, days when fear creeps in again. But the difference now is I don't run from those feelings. I face them. I write about them. I've learned that being alive isn't about being happy all the time. It's about being aware, being present, being real. A few months ago, I went back to visit my old office building. I stood outside, watching the people rush in with their coffees, their tired faces, their fake smiles. I saw my old self in them, the man who thought he was living but was actually wasting away. I didn't feel superior or proud. I just felt thankful. Thankful that I had the courage to walk away before it was too late. As I was leaving, one of my old colleagues spotted me. He came running, shocked, "Zane, man, where have you been? You look different." I smiled and said, "Alive." He laughed, but I could tell he didn't understand what I meant. Most people won't until they experience it themselves. When I got home that night, I wrote a post titled, "Don't Waste Your Time." It was short but powerful. I wrote, "You can always earn money again. You can always rebuild a career, but you can never relive the time you've already spent. So spend it wisely in things and people that make your heart feel alive." That post went viral. It reached millions. People from all walks of life shared their own versions of wasted time and rediscovery. It became more than just a story, it became a movement. Now, every time someone messages me saying, "Your words made me quit my toxic job," or "I finally started the project I was too scared to begin," I smile and whisper to myself, "This is what my father meant. His words, time is the only thing you can't earn twice," became the seed that grew into everything I am today. And here's the truth I want to leave you with. You don't need to lose everything to start living meaningfully. You just need to stop postponing your life. Don't wait for the right time. It doesn't exist. The right time is now. Because if you keep waiting, one day you'll wake up and realize that your dreams expired while you were too busy surviving. Don't let that happen. So, tell me, what's the one thing you've always wanted to do but kept delaying? What's stopping you from doing it today? Comment below and let me know. Maybe writing it down will be your first step toward change. If you felt connected to my story, if it made you rethink how you spend your time, then please like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder, and subscribe for more real-life stories that make you pause and reflect. Remember, life isn't a race to the finish line. It's a journey through moments, through words, through meaning, and I hope you make every second of it count. Thank you for listening to The Wordy Journey. I'll see you all in the next story.